increases Canada tariffs to 50%.
On steel and aluminium.
Right, and it's the developing story since then is that he has ruled out a tariff exemption for Australia.
Yeah.
We're starting to get a bit Pine Gappy.
Oh, not yet.
Not yet with Pine Gap?
No.
Leith Van Onselen, Chief Economist and Co-Founder of Macro Business. Leith, good morning to you. What does this practically mean for us? What does it, for the folks listening, what does this mean?
Look, it doesn't mean a whole lot for the Australian economy. So the Australian economy, we export very little stuff to the United States, and on steel and aluminium, respectively, we only export about $1.1 billion worth of steel and aluminium to the United States last year. So obviously a 25% tariff, it's not great, but it's very small impact on the overall economy, given we export so little to the United States. Now, that doesn't mean it's not bad for individual companies. So, for example, BlueScope Steel, they exported about 200 to 300,000 tonnes of steel to the US last year, and that was about 8% of their total steel production. So, obviously, if that leads to less demand for BlueScope Steel into the US, they're going to sell a bit less. It's not good for them. And the other risk of it is, obviously, the US is imposing the similar tariffs on China. And we could get the situation whereby China then ends up dumping their products onto Australia because they can't sell into the US as much. And then that will then impact Australian companies that then have to compete against that dumped Chinese product. So we know with BlueScope's already warned that Australia's energy costs are too high and that they're potentially looking to move to the United States because our energy costs are so much more expensive than they are in the US. And this would just be another dagger in the heart and could potentially lead to, a company like BlueScope shifting offshore. It could be one final nail in the coffin, but from an overall economy perspective, we don't sell a lot into the US, so it shouldn't have too much direct impact.
So, Leith, I was reminded on the weekend that when we went to uni, we were told that tariffs are really just a bad idea.
Yeah, well certainly the bigger worry about this is that it sparks a global trade war. So the United States, as we know, they've implemented these tariffs across the board, and we've already seen China, respond by threatening to put big tariffs on American agricultural products. Canada's also going to respond. They said they're going to respond by taxing energy imports into the US. And if we see the whole world obviously respond with retaliatory action, it'll have impacts on the financial markets. So, for example, companies which operate in a global environment, you will see their shares fall. And that'll obviously impact superannuation funds. And as I said before, the bigger impact on Australia is we could start seeing Chinese product get dumped into Australia, which will actually be deflationary from an inflation perspective because we'll end up with slightly cheaper goods getting dumped into Australia. But it will have, obviously competitive impacts on companies that compete against those goods.
So, and the financial markets are taking a pounding. They're down again 1.1% overnight. Are people going to start losing their sense of humour with all this?
Yeah, and obviously Australia's got trillions of dollars tied up in superannuation, so it is tied up in the financial markets. So it's not great from that perspective. And if there's one thing financial markets hate, they hate uncertainty, and they don't like change. And this is an economic shock that's been imposed by the Trump administration. Now, as I said, Australia, we don't export a whole lot to the US, so we are insulated, I guess, to a degree because we import so much more from the US than we export. And they're not a great, a big export market for us. But it's those sort of second-round impacts.
Good on you, Leith. Leith Van Onselen, Chief Economist and Co-Founder of Macro Business, top of 33. After this, Sly will opine on bail.